Hello, this is Perfect Death Ryan Chizik here, just to give a bit of a heads up on a little project that I have been working on in my spare time. Basically, I got a full-time job doing a whole bunch of work at a park plant, so haven't had a whole lot of time to either do things. So I've been working on a bit of a hobby project on the side called Slip Hero, and it's a web novel that I've been doing. And this is one of the things that has been distracting me with, actually writing the story. And that is the world building, something that I've probably had a little too much interest in doing over actually writing it. So I have a pretty sizable map drawn, and this map is pretty much just showing the terrain layers. You can see the light green is being more fieldy, while dark green is foresty, brown being mountainous, with the gray being the stony peaks. Well, you can see the different kinds of water depths and black lines representing rivers. And one of the things that I wanted to do with this is to mess around with layers. So I have, for instance, a layer that shows regions. This area is part of a continent called Valdera. And this was a bit of a test just to see how splitting different places up would look. And it turned out not too bad, but I figure that I'm going to change around the size of the regions and have them a little smaller. More around what the size you see for Wendon up here, because that seems one of the things that I plan on doing at some point is, instead of having this one massive document with a lot of layers, I'll focus on smaller parts, and that'll allow me to have more detail around, because I'll show you a bit about why that's a good idea. So I have nation names, landmarks, cities, and these can go over some different ones, like a political map, which, boom, you see a whole lot of stuff there. It's probably a better resolution to actually read anything. And this already shows a lot of information and can be a bit visually overwhelming. So I was thinking about having smaller scale maps, especially, it's easier to run on my computer. My old computer actually had a hell of a time opening this file once I started expanding outwards more, and you can see it goes really far out there. And so when I started adding the industries tab here, which shows a whole lot of other stuff, it actually made the program crash every now and then. So I had to frequently save it almost every 5-10 minutes, or else it would crash. But I have a new computer now, lots more RAM, so I could still work on this more, but I've pretty much decided to pause expanding this and just focus more on smaller areas. So in the current part of the story, I'm still in this general area around the Kondrakin Kingdom, and this is around the Kondrakin River. And so that river valley is probably going to be one of the first areas that I would focus on to show more, and then have some of the neighboring regions as the story moves around the place. And I have more layers than just this. So like the political map is one, and then there's also like the racial map, and it shows the kind of diversity here, where orange is the Ordermert ethnicity, while the dark red is the Critimert ethnicity. And there is some overlap with how these work and how it helps me to build the story, build the world, because the people and the terrain, the environment, they all have their own influences over creating the political situation. So you might be able to tell from this that there's some similar there's these little lines going through this part of the Condrican kingdom, and that has to do with a political change where there's a small kingdom around Corin that ended up essentially merging with the Condrican kingdom because they ended up having the same king. The Condrican king essentially inherited the Corin kingdom, and that results in the territories technically becoming the same place, but at the same time they're not really core together, for obvious reasons. There's a significant ethnic difference between the places, and that just creates a lot more political dynamics. And I've just been going nuts on some of this in some of these places. And then there's also the resource that I did, because people are going to produce certain kinds of resources around where they are, and this is kind of messy. Like gray is iron, black is coal, orange is copper. I have this sort of bluish silver mixed with these orange triangles or orange diamonds, and that represents tetrahedrite, which is a silver copper alloy, or not alloy, it's a silver copper ore. And there's another one which is it's galena, a silver lead ore. And then some other ones, little blue dots, which represent gem concentrations, and green, which is one of the kind of unique ores of this world, which is called gobite, because only the goblins really dig down far enough to mine this stuff. And you got your gold, which is yellow, and there's some other ones like little red dots represent hunting, gathering, while the brown dots represent forestry, timber. Then gets a little harder to actually see, but the little pink dots represent pastures, while the little yellow dots represent farmland. It gets a little tricky to figure out that. So it's not I might be able to figure out a better way of showcasing this if I focused more on just a region instead of creating this big world map that you look at and you go, what's all this stuff? And that also comes true when you see the industries pop up, because over here I've got a whole bunch of different industrial production represented by these little icons everywhere. And it's kind of like, how much do they produce of these? I start to ask, because some of the things go into other things. So you've got like wrought iron, which is the dull, darker gray, whereas a lighter gray is steel, and then this silver gray is mithril. And mithril is a product of iron, steel, basically, and a magical silver alloy that comes from processing gobite. So there are places that produce silver and lead, or just silver, and it's like, well, what's the magical silver? And how much of the place produces steel, because in some cases I'll have mithril icon, but they do produce steel and they do produce wrought iron. But it's like, how much in what ratios would they produce? And it would be way too hard to showcase it in this view because it's already cluttered. How much grain do they produce? These little grain icons that I got, but how much? So I'm definitely considering reworking a lot of this, but I know that if I do, I'm not going to be writing as much of it as I normally would, because I'm already like a month behind my current update. And that's mostly because as I expand along the story, I end up sitting down and expanding the political and the world building elements, which isn't bad. I mean, it adds a lot more detail to everything, but I certainly wanted to actually get some stuff down, because I've done a lot of world building over the years, but I usually don't make anything out of it. It's mostly just, you know, hobby practice stuff. So this is me pushing my skills a little bit more. And, you know, this is certainly a really good starting point for, you know, learning how to showcase a world building map. And I'm definitely looking on building off of this in a different direction. A lot of this stuff is still work in progress, but for the most part it's been a really good learning experience, and that was mostly why I started it. So this will be a, you know, short video just to test out and also see how my new computer handles new recording software as well. So I'm practicing lots of stuff today. Alright, that'll be it for this video. Take care.